Welcome to one of the launching videos of the study Trans Labour Market Wallet. In this video we present the results on trans people's capacity to work. My name is Kristina Alsen from Medida, and together with my colleague Lukas Romson from Rätt Olika I've been managing this project. Before you watch this film, we recommend you to watch the presentation about Trans Labour Market Wallet before seeing this film to get the necessary information on the study. This film is about trans people's capacity to work. One hypothesis we had in the beginning of the project was that being trans and being trans in a transphobic society creates mental illness, and that plays a big role in trans people's problems in the labour market. With all cards at hand, we wish we had asked about self-estimated mental health in a more nuanced way. Now the estimation we have is capacity to work. So what we can show is only those where it tips over to feeling so bad that your capacity to work is reduced. What we see is that not even half our respondents, but 44%, have the capacity to work full time. The share is a little bit higher in Sweden than in Finland, probably because of the age differences. More than 10% of trans people in both countries have no capacity to work at all. We asked the respondents thought they would have better capacity to work if they weren't trans or if society was more trans inclusive. Only 1/4 said no, and nearly half were pretty sure it was. So trans people themselves see a connection between their situation as trans and their working capacity. Several people told stories about transphobia around them and how it contributes to mental illness. This is one of them. All the crap, transphobia, TERF ideology, etc., on the internet paralyzes me and makes me afraid. About half our respondents with reduced capacity to work, the pink parts, had received some sort of rehabilitation interventions to increase capacity to work. The other half had not. As we saw in the video about the labour market, almost half of the unemployed trans people say they are not able to work at all, and the yellow part of the staple. Those able to work full-time, the purple part, is only 15% of the unemployed, so there seems to be a lack of adequate support and rehabilitation to trans people. One of the factors that mostly affects capacity to work for all people is if they have a disability. The same goes for trans people. We asked for physical, neuropsychiatric, intellectual disabilities and mental illness. The more forms of disability you have, the more often capacity to work is reduced. But it should be noted that even among those with no disability, 35% still have reduced capacity to work. We know about a big overlap of being trans and having a neuropsychiatric disability. This overlap explains some of the lower capacity to work, but not all. In the group with no NPF, there is still almost 10% with no capacity to work, the yellow staple part, and only 57% fully able to work, the purple staple part. And we can see an even stronger correlation with mental illness as an explanation to reduced capacity to work. But once again, only half of those with no mental illness are able to work full-time. So is there any correlation to gender? Our results show that some, but very weak correlation. Looking at the gender clusters, the group non-binary AFABs more often has a reduced capacity to work. One factor that showed up several times in our qualitative material is that as access to treatment could increase well-being and thereby also capacity to work, so we looked into this. When we looked at those that changed their legal gender, we saw no connection at all. But if we look at access to gender-affirming treatment, we can see some correlation. It's statistically very weak, but together with the qualitative material, we believe this is a valid factor. The same goes if we look at how long time people have been waiting to change their legal gender. The group that only had to wait between 1 and 3 years are more often able to work full-time, and those with a very long waiting time are more often completely unable to work. The group that has waited less than a year in the bottom of the diagram are exclusively Finnish people that changed their gender very recently after the change in the law in 2023, and that's why they don't fit into the pattern. We can also see a correlation between waiting for gender-affirming treatment and working capacity. The correlation is not significant, but the causality is strong. Many told stories about how waiting time had affected their health not only while waiting, but for the rest of their lives. This is one of them. I've been fighting to stay alive for 10 years, so I'm now burned out. Still not recovered, despite anti-anxiety and antidepressants, and finally reached the state in my gender-affirming care that I'm satisfied with. So we think there's a connection between access to care and capacity to work. It's good to remember that capacity to work is a complex issue and that reduced capacity to work can have many explanations and different ones for different people, and that's probably why correlations are so weak. In the focus group, several participants talked about how it had affected them to be open or not to be open. Openness can be a source of strength and pride, but it can also increase exposure to transphobia in different ways. Our statistics support this very varying view. To make it short, correlations are a mess. They go all way, or they do not exist at all. The same goes for feeling support from other trans people. Those that say that they have no support at all are a little more often completely unable to work, but they are also a little more often able to work full time, so there's no clear correlation. But we have so many witnesses telling stories about how trans people help them that we believe there is some sort of connection on the individual level, even though the statistical evidence does not really exist. I would never have survived without other trans people, says one person in the study. And another one say, not so much support from trans people as a group, but from certain people. I'm grateful for those who are open. They really inspire me. One of the focus groups came to talk about self-confidence as a protective factor. We asked the question about if you feel that you can live as yourself as a trans person. This turned out to be one of our stronger correlations to working capacity. Those that can fully live as themselves can more often work full-time. The correlation is weak, but it's significant. And there is a correlation between receiving treatment and living as yourself. So to conclude, trans people do not work to a great part because they can't. There's a strong correlation to disabilities, especially to mental illness. Trans people themselves say the cause of their reduced working capacity is trans identity and trans hostile society. Being able to live as yourself is a key factor to being able to work. And access to treatment can increase well-being and thus capacity to work. Thank you for listening to this video, and please watch some more of them in